Let's analyze this. So, Wrestlelamia, prominent wrestling channel on YouTube, did a video giving out five potential rumored women's tag teams in the WWE roster, on the WWE roster, I should say, the main roster right now, who are rumored to become the first WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, but the first WWE Women's Tag Team Champions since the Jumping Bomb Angels, since the Glamour Girls were the last Women's Tag Team Champions back in February of 1989 before the titles were deactivated. Just a little short history lesson of the Women's Tag Team titles. They didn't last long. They lasted officially from 1983 to 1989. Damn near 30 years. And they weren't prominent. They were not a prominent feature on the in the WWF at the time. They were not a prominent thing. They weren't that important. Originally, they were the NWA Women's World Tag Team Championships, but of course, the WWF and many other territories have broke away from the NWA, because back then, the NWA pre-territory days, it was just one single entity. So if you were a professional wrestler back then and you wrestled here in the States, in America, you were part of the NWA. If you weren't a part of the NWA, you either wrestled overseas or you didn't wrestle at all back then. And of course, around, I believe, around the mid to late 50s, early 60s was when the territories started coming about. That's when you had the AWA, you had Mid-South, the NWA became essentially a single entity and then became Jim Crockett. Then you had the WWF, you had, the Memphis territories, all of those different territories that broke in. Like, at one point, you had, multiple NWA territories. Like, there was NWA Georgia, which, I'm trying to think. One of you peeps can correct me if I'm wrong on what I'm about to say. I believe that the NWA had different territories within the realm of NWA. Like, you had NWA Georgia, you had NWA St. Louis, things like that. But I digress. The Women's Tag Team Championships is coming back as of this past Monday night on Raw. Chairman, CEO, boss, Vince McMahon made the announcement on Raw, dressed as Santa Claus. Let's try to forget about that aspect of the announcement. But I believe this is the perfect time to bring women's tag team wrestling back into the WWE. They have a lot of talented women on the roster. They have a lot of women who they don't know what the hell they want to do with them, so you might as well bunch them up, team them up together. The most prominent all-time great women's tag team division, in my view, was the TNA Knockouts tag team division. And even they didn't last long. The belts were defunct around, I believe, 2012 or 2013. One of you peeps can correct me on that one. But anyway, I fully expect Sasha and Bayley to be the inaugural women's tag team champions, because this storyline has been dragged on long enough. And if that doesn't happen, it's going to be like, what the fuck was the point of the storyline? I fully expect Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. I expect their hats to be thrown into the mix. I don't know who else, possibly. Maybe the Bellas. The Bellas might come back and try to get the tag team titles. I don't know. That's all. Those are the top three teams I can think of at the moment, I believe. Oh, and Nia Jax and Tamina, possibly. I could see that happening. let that be the only championship, the first and only championship that Tamina gets in her career. But anyway, those are the 4 teams that I just named that I know for a fact will be women's tag team champions at some point. It is unclear whether it's going to be 2 different belts for both Raw and SmackDown, or will the tag team titles just be for both brands? We're not sure. I'm not sure. But let's see what Wrestlelamia, let's see what they have to say.
On Christmas Eve, WWE's head honcho Vince McMahon, who was dressed as Santa Claus, announced on Raw that not only will John Cena be returning on both Raw and SmackDown, he confirmed new tag team titles.
Which, now they're saying John Cena won't be on Raw this week for New Year's Eve, so I don't know how much truth there is to that rumor. I've heard that Cena doesn't really want to be on TV anymore like that. He wants to mainly work live events, so who knows.
For the women's division, it wasn't explained how WWE would be crowning new champions, but he just confirmed it will happen in 2019. Interestingly, Vince didn't specifically mention that there are 2 belts for both Raw and SmackDown respectively, which could indicate the belts will be dual branded, and thus we could have a dual branded tournament to decide its first champions.
Now, the problem with that is that if the belts will be dual branded, then you might as well make all of the belts dual branded. You might as well scrap the SmackDown tag titles for the men. You might as well scrap the Universal title on Raw. And to be honest, you kind of might as well scrap the US title. I don't see any use for the US title anymore, really. Honestly. I don't know. It's not important anymore. And it hasn't even been important since Shinsuke has held it. So it's really been just down. I don't know. It's just my view. I don't feel it anymore. Like, it doesn't feel like the US title. I mean, it's really been meaningless for a while. I think the last time it actually meant something was when Cena held it 3 years ago. I'm not talking about his first initial runs as US champ. So I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. And like, I know that the women's tag team division is going to be more smaller than the men's tag team division, but still, I don't know. I didn't like that they brought the brand split back anyway. I understood that they needed to because the roster got bigger again, but there's still a lot of guys and girls on the roster that still aren't being used. So the brand split only benefited like maybe 3 people. Becky Lynch, AJ Styles, possibly Daniel Bryan. Because if it hadn't been for the brand split, and Dean Ambrose for a short period of time, because if it hadn't been for the brand split, none of those guys would have been world champions. Let's be real here. Possibly. I don't know.
Being dual branded, this also supports the rumors that the belts are neither red or blue, but a neutral white strap. However, those who are thinking that this is the first time WWE has introduced a tag team championship for the women's division are sadly wrong, as the WWF Women's Tag Team Championship was first established in 1983, but it only saw 5 different tag champions before being deactivated in 1989, with Leilani Kai and Judy Martin as the Glamour Girls being its last champions. So it's been over 30 years since we've seen a women's tag champion, but like most championships such as the current cruiserweight title, it's been reported it will not follow the lineage of the original belts, so who will be crowned its inaugural champions? Number 5, the Iconics.
Wow, I forgot about the Iconics. I don't know how good or bad that is.
Despite being healed, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce received a huge welcome on the blue brand, interrupting the then SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair, as fans were eager to see what the Aussie duo could achieve on the main roster. It turns out, however, it was very little. Though the duo flourish on the mic, they haven't had much of a chance to prove what a splendidly cohesive tag team they really are. Whilst they have been on the end of a number of losses on SmackDown Live, they are always on the same wavelength. but lately the two haven't been seen in the ring, which is a shame as they seem to be behind more popular stars such as Becky Lynch, Asuka and Charlotte Flair. But that could all change when winning the championships, as it'll no doubt propel them to the near top of the women's division and dispel the idea that most NXT call-ups simply fizzle out after their debut.
Now, my biggest problem with the Iconics is actually their mic work. I don't like them on the mic. I find them very annoying. And I know they're heels, and I know that's their characters, but even, like, a lot of times when I hear them talking normally, and, like, off character, I still find them to be very annoying. I don't know. They have very thick and heavy Australian accents. I mean, I'm not trying to shame them for their accents. I have no problem with Australian people, but still, I don't know. It's just something with them. I get almost a Vicky Guerrero vibe from them. Like that level of annoyance. But the thing is that when Vicky talked normally, I wasn't annoyed. It was just when she yelled that I was annoyed. I don't know. But they were really good in NXT in the ring. So I wish they would get a better opportunity. And perhaps they will when these women's tag titles become a thing.
4. Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. Though their relationship has been a little rocky as of late, it was inexplicably resolved after they shockingly beat Asuka and Charlotte Flair on a recent episode of SmackDown Live. Was this big win an omen of what's to come for the duo in 2019? There's no denying that both Rose and Deville work well together in and out of the ring, so why not up their game by becoming the first champions? While Sonya Deville has always looked to be the standout of the two, Rose has recently proved that she has as much, if not more potential than her partner, bettering her in ring work and promos, becoming championship material. There's no doubt a lack of babyface teams on the blue brand for the two to defend their championships, but if the titles can be defended on both brands, we could see an incredible feud between them and the Boss and Hug Connection on Raw. Number 3.
Rose is getting better. They're both getting better. The hell I wanted to say. Yeah, they're getting better. I forgot about the Riot Squad as well. It's weird.
The Riot Squad. During the fabulous Freebirds run as tag team champions in the NWA,
to me this is the greatest team faction of all time. When I say by team faction, I mean I don't count the Four Horsemen. They're arguably the greatest faction of all time, but they didn't all team up. If that makes any sense. They didn't all team up like that. And when Tully and Arn were the tag team champions, or Arn and Ole were the tag team champions, they didn't have they didn't follow the Freebird rule. So that's why I give more credit to the fabulous Freebirds.
they introduced a rule that would change the dynamics of a tag team match forever, that being the Freebird rule, where teams as large as 3 or more could have any 2 members defend the belts. Teams such as Demolition, the NWO, the Wyatt family and the New Day, to name a few, have all capitalized on this rule, winning and defending championships. The same could be done for the first time in the women's division with the Riot Squad. Even though the trio are regulars on the red brand, they are always likely to be on the losing end, regularly losing to a random trio of wrestlers. They've been a trio from the start, so shouldn't they work better and get the majority of the wins? Whatever the case, WWE could add this great dynamic from the start, putting the titles to Wyatt, Logan and Morgan. Number 2. Trish Stratus and Lita.
Oh, Trish Stratus and Lita. I don't know. Them coming back and winning the titles would have to constitute a run. And I can't see them being on a run. Like, they've only come back in short spurts, for little short moments and matches. I can't see them back for an entire run. And I also don't want to see them win the belts just to lose it like a week later. Or even the same week. You know, I don't want to see that. I have no interest in seeing that. I don't know. I'm sure it would mean a lot to them, but it would be a disservice. No.
Never put a title on a part-timer. That should be
that too, because fans will bitch and complain about that.
the rule of 2019. However,
Even though for me as an MMA fan, I have no problem with that because I'm used to seeing champions not be on television for weeks and months at a time. Even before Brock became Universal Champion and all of these other part-timers became champions, I was already used to that being an MMA fan, so it never bothered me. And plus, the people who complained about part-time champions, they could not watch wrestling in the 70s and 80s. They could not. Or even in the 90s to a point. Because remember, when Hulk Hogan was Hollywood Hogan in the NWO and he was WCW World Heavyweight Champion, he didn't defend the title that much. His defense against Sting at Starrcade 97, that was maybe only his third or fourth defense of the title. And he had held it for what? A little over a year? So...
But there should be an exception for two legends who have helped pave the way for the women's revolution. Both Trish and Lita did so during the Attitude Era, a time when women in wrestling were secondary and for the most part ignorantly portrayed. Trish and Lita are undoubtedly two of the biggest names to come out of the division, and even though they've only wrestled 3 matches this year, there are...
Let me say something real quick. Trish Stratus is overrated. I know not many people are going to like that, but I don't give a damn. Trish Stratus is overrated in terms of being an all-time great women's wrestler. Do I have her in my top 10? Yes. Is she top 5? No. To me, the greatest women's wrestler of all time, in my view, especially of this modern era, is Gail Kim. Not Charlotte Flair, not Asuka, not Sasha Banks, not Bayley, not Becky, not Trish, not Lita, but Gail Kim. She continues to fly under the radar in terms of being an all-time great women's wrestler. People do not mention Gail Kim that much. She's very underrated, and she shouldn't be underrated. That's the problem.
There are rumors of the pair wrestling at Wrestlemania, where they could possibly crown the new champions. And number 1, Sasha Banks and Bayley. Before even hitting the main roster, both Sasha Banks and Bayley already proved to have 2 of the best matches in WWE women's history, and fans were eager to see what the 2 could do when called up. But even though the 2 have accomplished winning the division's most coveted prize on the red brand, the Raw Women's Championship, their runs haven't been that memorable. Whilst many wanted to see one of the 2 switch to the dark side and turn heel on the other and feud for the rest of 2018, there was obviously a good reason as to why WWE kept them together, as they are the most obvious choice at being the inaugural tag champions. Banks commented in an interview with Sky Sports that her and Bayley's main goal would be the tag titles, saying, "That's a dream come true, and to work with my best friend, it's an honor. For me, I think the next focus is being a tag team champion. That's the goal. That's something I really wanted to work for. And if we get those titles, I want to make sure that's the most important title in the WWE. But who should be the first champions? Let us..."
Alright, so that's about it. Interesting video. He pointed out some teams that I didn't even think about mentioning, and he didn't mention Nia and Tamina like I did. I could just see that happening. So yeah, that's about it. Next year, like I said, this coming year, 2019, will be very interesting in terms of the WWE. It's going to be real interesting to see things that play out, storylines, championship runs, feuds, things of that nature, call-ups, NXT call-ups, that I'm sure will be happening. So comment down below how y'all feel about it, and I'm out.